Please go to Finnegans Wake Notes.net for a full explanation of the text, and please don't forget to hit the like button.
Welcome to episode 34 of the Reading Finnegans Wake in 200 Sessions podcast, where we analyze Finnegans Wake by James Joyce 3 pages at a time. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment to support us.
And welcome back to this custom deep dive. We are plunging, well, headfirst really, into pages 110 through 114 of chapter 5. And this is a truly foundational part of the text, isn't it?
Yeah.
And incredibly confusing.
Oh, absolutely. It all centers around this famous document, this letter that keeps getting rediscovered.
Right, the letter.
Exactly. And our sources for this deep dive, they're these really detailed scholarly analyses focusing just on this pivotal artifact. So the mission, well, it's a bit challenging. We're not just reading a story here.
No, it feels more like excavation.
That's a good way to put it. We need to dig into the bizarre context of how this letter was found. You know, the hen, the dump, the political theft element almost. And then we need to look really closely at its physical reality.
You mean the paper itself?
Yeah.
The stains, the handwriting. All of it. The paper, the stains, the holes, even the fact that the handwriting goes in multiple directions. What does all that tell us about, well, truth, history, memory itself? That's the core question.
And what struck me immediately is that Joyce doesn't really ease us into this. It's like this literary discovery becomes a doorway straight into a pretty high-stakes philosophical debate.
Exactly. You're sort of forced to ditch classical linear logic before you even, get your hands on the actual letter artifact.
Yeah, it's like setting new ground rules right away.
Precisely. We're told right at the start that we're entering a world where the possible becomes the improbable. And then the improbable suddenly becomes the inevitable.
It's a total inversion.
It is. And the text basically says, if we want to understand what happens next, we have to accept this possibility of sequentiality of improbable possibles. It's much more than just, literary flair. It feels like a guide for navigating confusion itself.
Okay, so that philosophical setup is key. Let's maybe start there in that first section, 110.01 to 110.21.
Right.
The opening lines feel so specific yet mythic. The river felt she wanted salt. That was just where Brine came in. The country Brine.
It's an immediate juxtaposition, isn't it? Very primal. You've got the river, the Liffey, which is usually ALP, and Olivia Pluribel, the feminine flowing element.
And she's longing for the ocean, for Brine.
Yes, Brine, often linked to the sea, the sort of male principle, the father figure, HCE. The river needs salt. It's this fundamental need.
And our sources highlight how this need for salt immediately connects to, well, China, surprisingly.
Yeah, absolutely. It broadens the scope right away. For the ancient Chinese, the sea was complex. It was vast, mysterious, sometimes seen as a symbol of oblivion, where things get lost.
Oblivion, okay.
But paradoxically, it was also the source of wonderful salt, essential salt, something the fresh river water just couldn't provide on its own. So this longing for salt it's longing for kind of necessary oblivion, maybe a cleansing, that still provides something absolutely vital for life.
That feels connected then to the next lines about Ireland's identity being, well, absorbed. We who live under heaven, we of the Clovery kingdom, Ireland, the Shamrock kingdom.
And then called Middleins people.
Right, Middleins. What's going on there?
Well, it's a classic Joycean multi-layered pun. On one level, middling sin, humanity stuck between heaven and hell. But the sources point strongly to the geographical and political layer. Middlesex people.
Middlesex, as in near London.
Exactly. Just like the old county of Middlesex got swallowed up by the expansion of London, Ireland, the Clovery kingdom historically found itself absorbed into the UK. So that single word, Middleins, packs in all this tension between local identity and, well, imperial absorption.
That tension really sets the stage perfectly for bringing in Dublin's own philosophical resistance, which is where we meet. Stern chuckler mayhappy mayhap not.
Ah, yes. Sir John Pelham Mahaffy, a huge figure. Renowned classic scholar, provost of Trinity College Dublin for ages, famous for his wit, his skepticism.
And he apparently said something very specific about Chapel Isid, the setting for much of the book.
He did. His famous line, invoked right here, is that Chapel Isid, or Isid Chapelas Asidalucan, as Joyce twists it, is the one place where the possible was the improbable and the improbable the inevitable.
That really messes with your head. Certainty is out, Impossibility is the rule.
It absolutely is. And the text immediately throws this barrage of linguistic puns at you to reinforce it. We jump from Dublin to Greece to Albania.
I saw that. Lutron, lucha ult, nalt.
Right. Greek lutron for ransom, Latin lutra for otter, then Albanian ulti for low, nalti for high, mad val for great valley or vale of tears. It's layering high and low, ransom and loss, different languages, all confirming that this place, Chapel Izid, is fundamentally paradoxical, meaning isn't stable.
So if the setting itself is paradoxical, then reality has to be questioned too. And that leads us straight to the proverbial bishop of our holy and undivided. That has to be Bishop Berkeley, right?
Oh, absolutely. George Berkeley, the great Irish philosopher, his big idea, esse est percipi. To be is to be perceived.
And the sources are saying his philosophy is basically the engine driving all this confusion.
They are emphatic about it. If reality is only what's perceived, then in the dream state of Finnegans Wake, the reality and the dreamer, they're undivided. There's no objective out there separate from the mind dreaming it all up.
Wow. And Joyce connects that directly to Hamlet, doesn't he? Me ken the zot is the question.
Genius, isn't it? To be or not to be, but mashed up with Scottish ken for to know and Albanian zodi for God. So it makes the whole existential crisis about knowledge, perception, even divinity. And then comes the philosophical punchline, around line 1N.15.
Which is?
If Berkeley hit the nail on the head, then what we're in for is a sequentiality of improbable possibles.
Okay, let's pause on that phrase, improbable possibles, because that feels like the absolute key to reading everything that follows, not just here, but maybe the whole book.
Sure.
How does that flip things compared to, say, traditional storytelling?
It's a direct challenge, almost an attack on Aristotle's ideas in the Poetics.
Yeah.
Aristotle famously preferred probable impossibles.
Probable impossibles, like sci-fi, where you accept an impossible premise, like dragons, but then the story follows logically from that premise.
Exactly. The premise might be impossible in our world, but within the story's rules, the events feel probable, coherent. You accept the dragons, and the plot makes internal sense.
Right. You buy into it.
Joyce just throws that out the window. He says, nope, we're dealing with improbable possibles. The things that actually happen in this section, like a hen finding a letter in a dump, the totally bizarre content of the letter, these things are technically possible. A hen could scratch up a letter. People do write fragmented notes.
But it's wildly unlikely, absurd almost.
Precisely. It defies narrative probability, any sense of neat order. Joyce is insisting that reality, especially when we try to piece together history from fragments, is often this chaotic, unlikely mess.
So the book isn't just asking us to accept absurd fiction, it's demanding we see the absurd as potentially historical truth.
That's exactly what the sources suggest. The events described are called utterly impossible in one breath, but then probably is like those which may have taken place as any others which never took person at all. The line between fact and fiction just dissolves. We're in this subjective reality where the weirdest, most unlikely things might actually be what happened, and the neat logical stories are probably just made up.
Okay, that's a huge setup. And it leads perfectly, if maybe a bit abruptly, from Berkeley's subjective mind games to the very dirty practical reality of the discovery itself.
Yes, the big philosophical question, ahan or amen, just gives way to that original hen, the origin point, and the old chicken or egg question, to hen, the one.
It's like falling from the clouds straight into the muck.
Literally. We're suddenly in bleak Janvier, midwinter, and there's this cold fowl, the hen, behaviorizing strangely on that fatal midden or chip factory or comical-bottomed copse jute dump for short. History literally being dug out of a garbage heap.
And there's that fascinating kind of grim historical footnote about the timing and the cold fowl.
Yes. The sources point out how this deliberately echoes the death of Francis Bacon.
The father of empiricism.
The very same. He died back in 1626, supposedly after catching a chill while stuffing a chicken with snow near Highgate. He was trying to test preservation by freezing. So the cold fowl and the dump become this little scene of, well, fatal experimentation. Finding truth is tangled up with cold, death, decay right from the start.
And even the dump itself isn't static, is it? It transforms.
Right, it mirrors that Viconian cycle we keep seeing. This midden eventually becomes an orangery, a place of cultivation, growth, oranges. And the discovery is linked to spontaneous fragments of orange peel, leftovers from some sunseeker's meal. So the letter emerges from this mix of decay, garbage, but also the faint memory of sunshine and life.
Then we get the human drama. The classic Shemshon sibling rivalry kicks in. The actual discovery is made by a merest of bantlings. Just a kid.
But keepy little Kevin, that's Sean, the rival brother, he immediately swoops in and claims the find, appropriates it.
And he tries to make it sound important, right? By linking it to the Ardagh chalice.
Exactly. He tries euchering the finding of the Ardagh chalice. It's pure deception. He's comparing finding this piece of trash in a dump to one of Ireland's most sacred national treasures, the incredible 8th century chalice found by 2 farm boys digging potatoes. Kevin is trying to cloak his dirty, maybe forged document in this aura of national innocent discovery.
And Joyce immediately blows that small domestic lie up into this huge, tragic, historical context involving the military and politics. This constant merging of the personal and the historical is so key, isn't it?
It's the engine of the wake. Kevin's little act of theft is tied to this pious clamor to wheedle Tipperah, rah-rah, re-rah pewters out of now Sealand, in spite of the patch purple of the massacre. That phrase is incredibly dense.
Okay, break that down. What's packed in there?
Well, first you hear the rah-rah-rah of blind patriotism mixed into the tune of the WWI marching song, It's a Long Way to Tipperary. Second, the Irish recruits are pewters, potato diggers, raw fodder for the war machine. Third, now Sealand is partly New Zealand, thinking of the Anzacs and Gallipoli's horrific losses, but it's also Ireland itself. Now Sealand, highlighting how colonial powers used Irish soldiers.
And they're being sent off despite the patch purple of the massacre. What's that?
The patch purple could be the visible sign of the slaughter, the blood-soaked landscape maybe, or perhaps even a critique of the overly ornate purple prose used to glorify the war. But the crucial connection our sources emphasize is deeper historically. The text explicitly links these WWI recruits back to the defeated Jacobite rebellion of 1688. It mentions most of the Jacobiters.
So the current war is just another replay of an old feudal sacrifice.
That's exactly the implication. History just repeating itself. This theme of recurrence, a duel to die today, connecting the modern folly of WWI back through centuries of Irish political and religious conflict. So Kevin's simple act of claiming a muddy letter becomes symbolic of these larger historical cycles of betrayal and pointless sacrifice. History doesn't offer clarity, it just repeats its wounds.
Okay, so after all that context, philosophical, historical, political way, we finally get to the actual artifact, the letter itself.
Right, and the hen who found it is identified.
Yeah.
Belinda the Dorans. She's more than quinquagenarian.
Over 50, maybe ALP's age. Or Nora Joyce's age, even.
Possibly. And she was scratching away at clocking 12 midday, or maybe just clocking time. The letter itself, it has a specific point of origin.
Boston, right.
Yes, a goodish size sheet of letter paper originating by transship from Boston, Massachusetts, the last of the first, the January 31st. And Boston, as the scholarship often notes, was like Ireland's 33rd county because of the huge diaspora there. So the source of the historical record is already displaced, coming from overseas.
And the content is famously, well, a mess, like fragments of a telegram almost.
Right.
Domestic troubles seem to be the theme.
Definitely. Things like Maggie well and Allahome's health well, only the hate turned them mild on the Van Houtens in the general's elections with a lovely face. It's all disjointed, but you piece together this picture of domestic life going sour.
The hate turned the mild on the Van Houtens. What's that about? Cocoa.
Exactly. Van Houten's Dutch cocoa was famously used for wedding cakes, so the line literally means the heat soured the milk for the cocoa. Domestic bliss, the wedding cake mix, is literally spoiled by tension, by hate. And this personal failure is happening against the backdrop of big, chaotic public events like the general's elections. Then there's mention of a funeral. Poor Father Michael. It's a mix of mundane disaster and bigger events.
And the way it's signed off is also significant, especially the 4 cross kisses.
Yes, the closing is fondest to the twins with 4 cross kisses for Holy Paul, Holy Quarter Holy, Holy Island, P.S. Those 4 X's, XXXX, they mean kisses, sure. But also the cross of Christ and, very importantly, the traditional mark made by people who couldn't write their name.
Like Nora Joyce's father, perhaps?
Potentially. Joyce linking the letter's simple author back to this common unlettered tradition. It grounds the document in ordinary life.
And then the postscript, the P, brings us to the most famous physical feature, the stain. Locusts made all, but this sign shall they never.
That's the one, the big tash of titch, the T stain. And this stain is explicitly linked to Shem.
Shem, the forger, the master builder.
Right, master builder, builder, forger. He supposedly signed the page away with overcautelessness. The idea is the stain marks it as Shem's work. Maybe a copy that was too perfect, too finicky compared to a lost original. And the stain itself is described almost reverently, yet profanely. It's a genuine relic of ancient Irish pleasant pottery, but it's also potentially P.S. P.S. or, well, urine mixed with tea, referencing a joke from Ulysses.
So it's sacred and profane, permanent yet stained.
Exactly. It's the one sign that time, the locust, can't erase. And this idea of decay, of the stain being the most permanent part, leads straight into the central metaphor for understanding history in this section.
The photographer's spoiled negative. This feels like the real aha moment for the reader.
It really is. It's like Joyce is giving us the instruction manual. He asks us to imagine a photographer's glass negative of a horse melting while it's drying. You don't get a clear picture. You get a grotesquely distorted macromass.
So the process of history itself, the time spent buried in the heated residence of the dump, has basically melted the original image.
Precisely. It has obliterated the negative. The past, the longer it stays buried or unexamined, the more fragmented and distorted it becomes, like that melted negative.
And the distortion isn't even uniform, is it? Features palpably near your pecker, your nose, presumably, to be swollen up most grossly, while things further away are lost unless you use a lens.
And that's a direct warning, isn't it? To historians, to us as readers. Things that are close to us now, our current biases, our present concerns projected onto the past, they get exaggerated, swollen up most grossly. The objective truth of the past, pretty much lost. The only hope of getting any perspective is through distance and effort, the loan of a lens.
But hang on, if the original source material is already this corrupted mess, this melted negative, what's the point of applying a fancy scholarly lens? Aren't you just putting an intellectual filter over garbage?
But that's exactly the question Joyce forces us to confront. The lens, the scholarly effort. It can't magically restore the pristine original truth. That's gone. What the lens can do is help us understand the nature of the distortion itself.
Okay, so we study the flaws.
Yes. The letter isn't valuable because it gives us objective facts about HCE. It's valuable because it's decay, it's fragmentation, it's stains. They reflect the universal process of how history gets remembered, misremembered, and distorted. The lens makes us aware of our own subjective viewpoint and the sheer impossibility of ever getting back to an unmediated past. The real knowledge isn't in the letter's supposed content, it's in its condition. The physical flaws are the story.
Right, that makes sense. The medium is the message, almost literally here.
Exactly.
And that brings us to a point where the narrator actually pauses, addresses the reader directly, acknowledges that, yeah, this is overwhelming. He was feeling like he was lost in the bush, facing a puling sample jungle of woods.
It's a moment of, well, kindness, almost. Before launching into the next big synthesis, the narrator gets that the reader is probably drowning in details, maybe can't see the wood for the trees.
But there's reassurance, even if the experts, the quad gospelers, own the official interpretation, the Targum.
Even a Zingari Shularim, a gypsy scholar, a wanderer, someone outside the establishment, can still pick a peck of kindlings yet from the sack of all ensign.
So even from this huge, confusing pile of old chicken scratchings, ensign, the ordinary reader, the outsider, can still gather little sparks of meaning, little kindlings.
Exactly. And the plea that follows is just wonderful. Lead kindly foul.
A pun on the hymn, lead kindly light.
It is. And it elevates the hymn, the lowest figure here, the feminine principal, Biddy Doran LLP, into the role of the true guide. She's praised for her socioscientific sense, her instinctive grasp of historical cycles, her volucrine automutativeness.
And this bird-like instinct connects her directly to Vico, whose philosophy underpins the whole book.
Absolutely. The hen's life becomes a mirror for Vico's four-stage cycle of history. You see his ages, gods, heroes, men, and the recurso or return mapped onto her existence, be it fly, be it molt, be it hatch, be it agreement in the nest. Her simple life embodies this grand, universal pattern of recurrence and rebirth.
And this leads to a prophecy, doesn't it? The return of the Golden Age, which must return with its vengeance. What does this new Golden Age look like, according to the hen?
It's a really profound reversal of the status quo, particularly gender roles and historical burdens. Man, it says, will become dirigible, steerable, governable, maybe less aggressive. But the biggest shift is for woman.
She sheds her ridiculous white burden. What exactly is that burden?
It seems to be twofold. Most obviously the physical burden of pregnancy and childbirth, but also layered onto that is the ideological weight of the colonial white man's burden, now ironically applied to the societal expectations placed on women.
And shedding that allows her to reach sublime incubation.
Yes, it sounds like a reversal of the curse in Genesis. Maybe quick, painless childbirth, a liberated creative power, a new kind of femininity altogether.
And the final image is this picture of harmony, but with the genders flipped from the usual biblical image.
Right, the Lion and the Lamb passage gets completely reworked. The main wanting human lioness, with her dishorned discipular man-ram, will lie down together publicly flank upon fleece. The powerful female lioness is now with a domesticated, teachable male ram. It suggests peace, agreement in the nest, and maybe even a kind of androgyny resolving gender conflict.
It's quite a vision. But then, despite these huge philosophical ideas, the narrator pulls us back to the authoress of the letter, emphasizing her simplicity. She's a mere Marcella, this midget majesty, mistress of arts.
Yeah, she's presented as both small, like Marcella the Midget Queen from Swift maybe, but also educated a mistress of arts, feminizing the academic degree. And the key clue to her identity is on the paper itself, the watermark.
Notre Dame du Bon Marché.
Our Lady of the Good Deal.
Exactly. It refers to the famous, pioneering Paris department store. So she's linked not to high art or philosophy, but to everyday life, shopping, commerce, the domestic female sphere. And she explicitly rejects academic pretension. She's not trying to dizzle-dazzle with a great accoutrement of post-Mantuan glossaries from the Lapins and the Griggs.
Right, she's not showing off with fancy post-Virgil commentaries using Latin and Greek, the languages of male academic power. She's chosen the simple world of the marketplace over the library. It reinforces that idea that the real truth might come from the humblest source, the hand's discovery.
And after all that complexity, all the fragmentation, the philosophical deep dives, what is her actual message about HCE? It boils down to something surprisingly simple.
It really does. After a brief mention of that unreadable 100-letter thunder word like a burst of static before the clear message, we get the plain truth. All she wants, she writes, is just tell the cock's truth about him.
The simple truth, the cock's truth about HCE. And it's not some grand crime.
No, it's devastatingly human, almost mundane. His fault wasn't grand evil, just weakness. There were 3 men in him. That suggests inner conflict, maybe the Trinity, maybe family roles. And its only real failing, dancings with apple harlots and little mulvogels.
Dancing with prostitutes, maybe? And apple charlotte, the dessert?
Exactly. It mixes potential transgression with something completely trivial. The whole complex family drama, the rumors, the fall, it's summed up as, but an old story, the tale of a tree stone with one Isolde, the eternal Tristan and Isolde myth. The rivalry between gentleman against any Venus gentleman versus Venus, male versus female, it's ancient history repeated.
And just as we get that tragic romantic summary, the narrator cuts it off, demands straight turkey meat to mate, enough jiggery-pokery, back to the physical facts.
Abruptly, it's a return to the material evidence. But even that is immediately complicated by a warning about perception. The ear might believe hearsay, but the eye can find it devilish hard now and again even to believe itself. Even seeing the thing directly isn't reliable.
And this unreliability is shown through the 2 conflicting viewpoints trying to describe the letter. The worker, a tombstone mason, versus the poor joyist.
It's the Shemshon conflict again, manifesting as a professional dispute. The mason works with stone, death, the fixed past. The poor joyist, punning on poor Joyce, bourgeois society, maybe even perjury works with wood, structures, the present.
And because they have different perspectives.
We cannot say eye to eye. We cannot smile nose from nose. They fundamentally cannot agree, cannot see eye to eye, even when looking at the same object.
And the object itself, its physical structure, is the source of the disagreement. It's a crossed letter.
Right, that old technique for saving paper and postage. You write horizontally across the page, fill it up, then turn it 90 degrees, and write vertically across the first set of lines.
Which must create this incredibly confusing grid.
Absolute checkerboard.
Yeah.
And Joyce uses that physical reality to map global chaos onto this single sheet. Lines run north-south in the Nemzis and Bucharest directions, Germany and Bucharest. Others go west-east in search from Militses with Bulgarod, Malaysia, and Belgrade or Bulgaria.
Why those places? Germany, Romania, Malaysia, the Balkans? What's
Yeah.
the connection?
It seems to be about universality. This isn't just a Dublin letter. Its confusion, its crossed lines represent the tangled conflicts and miscommunications of the entire world. Central European tensions, colonial links. It's a microcosm of global messiness. And the lines themselves, the ruled barriers, were drawn first in a pretty checker with lampblack and blackthorn.
Using a blackthorn stick, a shillelagh, as a pen, that sounds primitive.
Exactly. And the text calls using the homeborn shillelagh as an aid to calligraphy, a distinct advance from savagery to barbarism. Its fate prays. They've moved beyond pure savagery, maybe, but only into a state of rough, culturally specific, forceful mark-making. And that checkerboard pattern also evokes snakes and ladders, chance, fate, rising and falling.
But the most baffling detail, the ultimate symbol of the text's difficulty, is the actual writing direction. Writing thitherways end to end and turning an end to end hitherways writing.
That's boustrophiton, the ancient Greek term meaning ox turning. It's how fields were plowed back and forth. So you write one line left to right, the next right to left, the next left to right.
Letters slittering up and louds of ladders slettering down. It sounds physically impossible to read, especially if it's also crossed vertically and horizontally.
It's designed to be almost unreadable. It's like the ultimate defense mechanism against easy interpretation. The text physically embodies resistance to a single fixed meaning. This chaos of direction, from them let rise till hum let sleep, this structural confusion, it leads directly to the final crucial question posed by this whole exploration.
Where in the waste is the wisdom?
Exactly. It brings us right back to the philosophical starting point and echoes T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. Where do we find meaning in all this refuse, this decay, this deliberate confusion?
Wow. Okay, so that dive into just 5 pages, it really shows the insane density of this text. We went from, high philosophy with Mahaffy and Berkeley, all the way down to a hen scratching in a dump and finding this tea-stained, multi-directional, possibly furged letter.
And crucially, every single physical flaw we talked about, the stain, the melted negative idea, the crossed lines, the boustrophiton writing, they weren't just descriptions, they were the narrative method itself.
The flaws are the story.
That's it perfectly. The letter, in its chaotic, contradictory, decaying state, embodies the book's whole argument. That our knowledge of the past is always a distortion. It's always a fragmented relic, a melted negative. And understanding it requires distance, effort, that loan of a lens. You, the reader, you have to become a detective of distortion itself.
So that final question, where in the waste is the wisdom? Given that the writing itself uses these archaic, almost primitive methods, lampblack, shillelagh, boustrophitum, maybe the suggestion is, well, that true wisdom isn't in the polished official histories.
Perhaps. Perhaps it's suggesting we need to look precisely in the waste, in the primitive, the chaotic, the anciently flawed forms of communication. Maybe truth only resides in the wreckage, not in the neat reconstruction.
Definitely something to mull over as you keep digging through the text. Look for the wisdom in the waste.
Keep examining the dirt. Find those kindlings. Lens always in hand.
Thank you for sharing your sources for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.